With this video, I'm going to start a series of videos showing all the options in the Kala 2023 version. Now, many of these, if not most of these options, are also in earlier versions of Kala. I explain the options. There'll be some, I'll be talking about some of the astronomical calculations that may be new to you, so there's a good opportunity to learn some neat stuff about astrology as we go as well. So, we have calculation options and we have a lot of visual options. I'll be covering all of those in these series of videos, starting with the calculation options. In the calculation options, we have the general options, Jaimini options, Ayanamsha options, house system options, dasha options, muhurta options, and some specific calculations for certain screens. We're going to start in today's video doing simply the general options. The first option here is the option for Rahu Ketu. We have the option of mean node or true node. It's a very common option that all software have. Traditionally, everyone used mean node, which simply they took the mean motion of Rahu and Ketu and they simply used it, okay? And so the average motion of Rahu Ketu over a long period of time, and they just projected that motion day by day, okay? The problem with the mean node option is that by definition, Rahu and Ketu are the points where the moon crosses the ecliptic. So, when the moon crosses the ecliptic, the node should be exactly conjunct the moon to the exact millionth second of arc, okay? When you use the mean node, that actually doesn't happen. So the moon can be crossing the ecliptic and then it's not conjunct to Rahu Ketu exactly. So the mean node is not a super accurate, calculation, okay? And it can vary from the true node by well over a degree, easily by almost 1.5 to 2 degrees is about the extent of the difference between mean node and true node. That can change a lot. Now, true node tries to make a more accurate calculation by defining where the Rahu Ketu is going to happen based on where the moon is right now. Okay, now the thing that makes that difficult is that the moon fluctuates all the time. He's constantly changing his speed and changing his latitude and longitude so quickly that it causes a lot of fluctuations when you use the true node, and so it'll actually move retrograde sometimes. But by definition, Rahu always moves retrograde. So what I mean is, sometimes the true node will appear to move direct. So it'll go retrograde, which is its normal motion. The nodes move in the reverse direction of the zodiac. But with true node, sometimes it'll appear to move direct. And people will try to read it differently as direct. But by definition, the node always moves reverse. So the true node, the problem with it, in my opinion, is that it kind of calculates, makes the node wobble back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And there's some debate over that's really accurate. But so far, it's the best calculation we found. And when the node does cross the ecliptic, when the moon crosses the ecliptic, it is exactly conjunct the node. And that makes it, in my opinion, a better option to use than the mean node option. Okay? All right. Then for planetary calculations, we have geocentric planet calculations and topocentric planet positions. Okay? Now, geocentric is what has always been used in astrology. And what we simply do, we calculate the planets as if we are in the center of the Earth, looking out. Okay? When we do it that way, no matter where you live on Earth, since you're calculating the planets from the center of the Earth, the planets are in the same position. So the planets in the same sign, same degree, same minute, same second of arc, whether you're in China or the United States or India at the same moment of time. Okay? Now, topocentric planet position is if you were standing on the surface of the Earth, and from your visual point of view, looking through the planet and seeing the sign behind it, that's the view you would get. And you would get a slightly different view if you were in China, India, or America. okay? Because your angle of view looking at that planet would be different, all right? So, topocentric is what you get when you actually looked out the window and saw it. However, in the old books that talked about visually calculating planets, they did a calculation adjustment to return that visual topocentric planet position to a geocentric planet position. Because in astrology, the planets are supposed to be at the same place at the same time from all places on Earth. Okay, that's why we have geocentric as the default. Some people like to research the topocentric planet position, so we have it there as an option. Okay, then there's something called the fatal degrees. The fatal degree is where the moon, if it's in that degree, can cause illness, disease, even death to the infant child. And also, if you have the moon in a fatal degree, there could be some inherent weaknesses in your health. Okay, so it basically can contribute to health problems. There's two different opinions about what the fatal degrees are of the moon. There's some slight differences. One source is Phaladeepika, the other source is Saravali. I have the Phaladeepika method as default because I found that to be more accurate. But we have the Saravali method there as well. Okay? For the Ashtakavarga calculation. So Ashtakavarga is a really great tool. I'm just going to open up a random chart right here. Just calculate a chart. And go to the screens, or the transits rather, Ashtakavarga. That's this numerical system of seeing where planets are from each other in the chart and giving numerical values as we see down here. Okay? It's a great snapshot way to examine a chart, make predictions, and also examine what's going to happen in transit. I have a really good course on it that I really like. So it's a good snapshot, easy beginner's thing. Brihat Parashara essentially calls it the astrology for dummies, where his student says, it's so hard to make predictions. What about just a normal person? How are they ever going to do this? And Parashara says, with Ashtakavarga, even a normal person who's not able to devote his whole life to astrology can make good predictions. Okay? So it's a neat technique for those who don't know about it. We have the Parashara options and the Varaha Mihira options. Now, there's very, very little difference between these options. It's like 2 points difference out of many, many points. It's a very slight difference. Now, the Parashara method is the same as shown in the Phaladeepika. Phaladeepika follows Parashara in essence, okay? And in the Parashara and the Phaladeepika, they show all these other calculations that they do after the Ashtakavarga is calculated to get some more, effects of transits. Okay, for instance, we have this thing called Ashtakavarga transit places that they basically teach you how to calculate. And lets us know sensitive rashis based on the bhavas. So here we can see from the sun, the 10th house from the sun is the father. So when Saturn transits through Cancer for this being here, for this person, that can cause trouble to their father. That's the idea of that technique. And in the in the Parashara and the Phaladeepika, they show these other calculations and all these they have these other calculations. They don't have that in the Varaha Mihira or the books that follow Varaha Mihira. So I usually run the Parashara because I like to use those calculations. But we have both options. Okay. Then we have debilitation calculations. We have the moon can be Parashara tells us that the moon is exalted from 0 to 3 of Scorpio. And it says the moon is exalted in 0 to 3 of Taurus. And Mercury is exalted in 0 to 15 of Pisces. And that opposite exaltation is debilitation. If we take that literally, that means the moon is debilitated from 0 to 3 Scorpio and Mercury from 0 to 15 Pisces, which is the exact opposite of where it's actually exalted. Or we can follow simply the moon is in all of Scorpio, or the moon is stability all of Pisces. So those are two options that you have. Okay, most astrologers use moon in all of Scorpio and Mercury all of Pisces, but we created this other option for people to research with and see if perhaps it works better. Okay, for the Pada calculation, we have the option to use Rahu and Ketu as the lords of Aquarius and Scorpio when they're stronger, or we simply use, Saturn and Mars always, no matter what. Okay, depending on what school of Padas you like to use, that gives you that option. Okay, Gulika is this child of Saturn. Okay, there's essentially each planet has a child based on the time, okay, and the day of the week. And Gulika is the one that's used most commonly. It's used for disease, longevity, time of death, things like that. It's used for more the Saturnian nasties in life, the actual parts of Saturn that are the scary parts. Well, that's what Gulika is used for. Okay. There's different opinions about how to calculate it. Either the beginning of the portion, because we divide the day into 8 parts, and each part has a beginning and end. Some people say Gulika is at the beginning of the portion. Other people say the end of the portion. The default is the beginning of the portion, which is more commonly used and the one that I found to be more accurate as well. Okay, then we have lots of yogas in Kala. Over here we have all these yogas that you can search. Bhava yogas, Balarishta yogas, which are infant mortality, the core yogas, which are the important named yogas, yogas that impact and planetary permutations that impacts the effects of dashas and so on. We have all these yogas. And you can search those yogas. So essentially you can go over to Hita yogas, dashas, planets, and see if Jupiter and Saturn join or aspect each other. Saturn's dasha will prove very fortunate, while Jupiter's dasha will be normal, ordinary. Okay? So you can calculate that, those type of yoga searches, using either Rashi aspects or planetary aspects according to which type of aspects you want to use. Okay? A really important option is temporary friendships. Okay, so temporary friendship, a planet's a friend when it's the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 10th, 11th, or 12th from another planet. When it's conjunct a planet, or in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th from a planet, it is a temporary enemy. Okay? Now, do we want to calculate that in the Rashi chart and carry those results over into the Vargas? Or do we want to cover that or do we want to check that in the individual Varga charts? Pretty much everyone is using individual Varga charts. So they calculate the temporary friendships in each Varga chart. I used to do that until I translated Prashara from the Sanskrit. And he says those that are in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 10th, 11th, or 12th from the planet at the time is a friend. He didn't say in the chart. He says at the time. Now, when we're dealing with time, we're always dealing with the Rashi chart. For instance, we have the waxing moon and the waning moon. That's a time factor. And that is based on the Rashi chart. We don't check to see if the moon is waxing or waning in each Varga chart. It's waxing or waning. It's an obvious visual thing. So time factors are something that are always calculated in the Rashi chart. They're always based on the visual astronomy. Once we start going into the Varga charts, we can have planets conjunct that are actually 180 degrees apart in the day, in the space. Okay. We also, for instance, one of the time factors we have is the lunar days. Every 12 degrees that the moon moves away from the sun is another lunar day. The lunar day is found in the Rashi chart. We don't have a different lunar day for every Varga chart based on where the sun is and moon are from each other in the Varga chart. So when he said at the time, that got me thinking, and I calculated the temporary friendships just for the Rashi chart. I actually found it to work much better. So it's been 15 years or more, much more than that. About 20 years now, I've been using the temporal friendships in the Rashi chart only and transferring those friendships down to the Varga charts, okay? All right. Then there's something called Pindadi Ayurdaya. That's basically a longevity dasha, a dasha based on how long you're supposedly supposed to live, okay? We can go look at it over here. We click on here, we got our Pinda dasha, okay? It's a dasha used in some of the old books. It's in Parashara, it's in Brahmahira's Brihad Jataka, it's in Saravali. In fact, Brihad Jataka does not even have Vimshatri. Instead, it has these kind of dashas, Pinda, Nisarga, and Amsha dasha. Especially Amsha dasha was followed a lot by some of these North Indian astrologers, okay? And they're very similar to the types of dashas the Persians and Greeks were using, okay? And maybe that's why in North India we see them mentioned in North Indian books, because, of course, the Alexander the Great came into North India and there was a lot of interchange with Greek culture and Indian culture. So the astrology they learned from each other. All right, so in this calculation, to calculate the dasha lengths and the dasha order, if the planets are in what houses the planets are in makes a difference. Okay, so you can have it so we use the Rashi chart houses or the Bhava Chalita houses. The Bhava Chalita is the unequal house cusp chart like they use in Western astrology, or you can use the Rashi chart to determine those dasha orders. Okay? Then we have the Varshapati calculation. What's the Varshapati? All right, let's go to screens, Varshaphala. Varshaphala means the fruits of the year, the results of the year. And it's essentially a solar return chart. So every year you get a chart. And you can predict your life based on that chart for that particular year. Now, one thing we have is the Varshapati, which means the Lord of the year. Now, whatever planet is the Lord of the year, you're going to have themes revolving around that. So right now, if this was a person's chart we're looking at, and we see Mars, we would know they're going to have the theme of competition, struggling to fix problems, dealing with emergencies, dealing with Mars stuff, basically. Okay, it's going to be part of their year right away. Now, to calculate the Varshapati, we have to find the strength of all the planets, and then we see how much the planet aspects the ascendant. The Varshapati, the year of Lord, has to aspect the ascendant. And in Varshaphala, we have certain aspects, okay? But we also, and the aspects are different than, the rest of Vedic astrology, but they work the same. So planets like Saturn and Moon here have a conjunct aspect. Saturn and Jupiter here have a square or secretly unfriendly aspect. Venus and Saturn have no aspect. Venus does not aspect the Lagna. Sun and Mercury don't. Saturn and Moon aspect the Lagna with a secretly friendly aspect. Jupiter and Mars do not aspect the Lagna. Okay, so the year Lord has to aspect the Lagna. Now, one way to do that is based simply on aspects based on signs. Or in Varshaphala, they also tell us how to calculate the aspect strength from 0 to 60 points. So we also, one of the options is to use the exact aspectual value. And so with this chart, when we use the exact aspectual value, Mars becomes the Lord of the year. Okay? The reason being because he's aspecting the first house to 35 points. Okay? That combined with his strength makes him have the strongest influence. So basically, we take the strength of the planet and we multiply it times the aspect, and whichever one has the most influence on the ascendant is going to be the Lord of the year. Okay? So if we didn't use that option, if we used a simple option, the Lord of the year becomes Saturn. Okay? So this is an easy thing to test. You can test these two options and see, oh, was it a more Saturnian year or a more martial year? You also have to consider yogas. In this chart, it wouldn't be the best test chart because Saturn is the Lagna Lord. And of course, whatever your Lagna Lord is, that's going to be, you're going to notice that. But the year Lord is the planet that has the most significance throughout the year. All right? So that's what that calculation option is. Okay, then there's something called Pranapada, Bhava, Hora, and Ghatika Lagna. A lot of people have heard of Hora Lagna and Ghatika Lagna and Bhava Lagna. They're used in Jamie, especially to predict Raj Yoga success. Pranapada, and what's unique to these, they're time-based calculations. This is a really important thing. They're time-based calculations. All right? They're not space-based calculations. And basically what happens is, with the Bhava Lagna, for every 2 hours after sunrise, the ascendant changes 30 degrees. With the Hora Lagna, for every hour of sunrise, for every hour after sunrise, the ascendant changes 1 sign. And for Ghatika Lagna, for every 24 minutes after sunrise, the Lagna changes 1 sign. All right? Now, Brihaprashara, when he tells us how to calculate the Bhava, Hora, and Ghatika Lagnas, he says these Lagnas are the same at all places on earth at the same time, while the birth Lagna, the ascendant, is different at all places at the same time. Okay? That's some serious astronomy. And the reason that is because, see, your ascendant, your birth ascendant, what we call the Janma Lagna, the one over here, Capricorn in this chart, is changeable depending where you're on Earth. Wherever you're on Earth, that ascendant, what's rising on the eastern horizon is different because it's a spatial Lagna. Based on the space I occupy on Earth, what is the rising sign? Okay? Now, the Bhava, Hora, Ghatika Lagnas are not based on your local space, where you're at on Earth. Prashar says at the time. Okay? These Lagnas are the same at all places at the same time, which means we have to calculate them from the same place, not from wherever you're at on Earth. Okay? And then it becomes a time factor. See, right now it's the very same time here where I'm at in Arizona, at the same moment in time as it is in Egypt. So, if I was talking to someone in Egypt right now, we'd be talking at the same time. Okay? However, I would be in a semi-arid environment, and they might be in an absolutely arid environment, looking out a window at a pyramid. Okay? Our space would be very different. I have a mountain behind my house, they might have a pyramid. Okay? We're gonna be surrounded by different space. So the ascendant is the space, but it's the same time. It's the same time on Earth. Okay, so time factors have to be calculated in a way that they're same for all places on Earth. And in the Surya Siddhanta, he tells us to calculate these type of time factors from a place called Yamakoti, which is the ancient prime meridian. So when you calculate these for Yamakoti, you're calculating them for the ancient prime meridian, which is at 165 east 46 in our modern longitude, and 0 degrees right on the equator. Okay? And, Vrahma here also tells us to calculate for Yamakoti. So Kala is the only software that gives the option for calculating from Yamakoti. And I found all these things to work better from Yamakoti. Pranapada is another time factor. And the house it falls into will reflect, some good or bad stuff in your chart. The results of that are in Brihat Prasha. Pranapada changes signs. If I remember right, every 5 minutes it changes signs. Okay? All right. So you can calculate these time type ascendants. Okay? They're not really ascendants, not really rising, but these time lagnas, let's say, for Yamakoti, for your local place, which is what's most commonly done, or you can calculate for Ujjain. There was a time in India they decided to calculate all these time factors for Ujjain, which they decided, no, the center meridian is in India. The Chinese, interesting enough, do this for Beijing. They calculate all their astrology charts for the time in Beijing. So they also have their prime meridian based on what's the center of the world to them. But really the center of the astronomical world, according to the old books from India, is Yamakoti. So I really recommend using that, experimenting with that. All right. Sunrise calculations. What's the time of sunrise? Sunrise becomes important for many, many calculations in Vedic astrology, particularly Shadbala is the common one that we use. But there's other factors that take into account sunrise. All right? So we have different options. The Hindu is when the Hindus, which means the astronomical books from India, tell us that sunrise is when the center of the sun is on the horizon. Okay? Now, you could also say that when the sun, the tip of the disk, the very top of the sun breaks the horizon, you can call that sunrise. Okay, that's like the crack of dawn there. Or you could say, all right, I'm starting to see the sun, but it's not officially sunrise until the center of the sun is on the horizon. That's the way the Hindu astronomy books do. Okay? But you can do tip of disk, which is true, which means when the tip of the disk is astronomically, mathematically on the horizon, or you can say when the tip of disk looks to be on the horizon, and there's actually a difference. Because see, the atmosphere will actually bend the light a little bit, so when it actually looks like the sun's just breaking the horizon, it's not exactly the time it is just breaking the horizon. There's a slight difference there. So because of the atmosphere bending the light of the sun, there is a difference there. Okay? The center of the disk, we can use center of the disk, where the center of the disk is actually on the center, or the center of the disk when it appears to be on the center, but it's not actually there mathematically speaking because the light of the sun is getting bent. Different people have different opinions what to use. In the Hindu calculation, it's the same as the center of the disk using the true place, the true center of the sun on the center or right on the horizon. And the center of the disk means the center of the sun's disk, okay? So that's center of the disk true is the same as Hindu. That's what they use in the old Hindu astronomy books, okay? All right, we're almost done. Notice some of these are very involved. This is definitely the most astronomically involved of the calculation options. But I think people should know what they're choosing, all right? So, combustion. Combustion is when a planet is no longer visible because it's caught up by the rays of the sun. It's essentially too close to the sun. In Sanskrit, we do not use this word combust. The planet is not considered to have caught on fire. What we use is ashti, which means set. The planet is considered to have sets behind the sun, so we can't see it. And none of its rays are reaching Earth because it's behind the sun, essentially. We have two methods for that. One's the contemporary method, which we say, oh, Mars is combust 15 degrees from the sun, 17 degrees when retrograde, and so on and so on and so on. Okay? So each planet has the degrees from the sun at which it becomes combust. And those degrees are the degrees given in the old astronomy books. Okay? So people look at their zodiac signs and they look at the degrees and they see how far the planets are away from each other and see if it's combust. What people forgot or didn't even understand when they read the old books is that the degrees are correct, but we're not taking those degrees on the zodiac, on the ecliptic. We're meant to take those degrees along a different plane, along a more visual plane, so that visually this planet is actually behind the rays of the sun or not. And so Scala is the only software that calculates combustion according to that method, which is what all the old astronomy books teach, including the Surya Siddhanta and Varaha and Mihira, which are the two most important schools. Okay? So this is something that's been forgotten, where combustion is seen just based on degrees, where it may actually not be combust. And oftentimes it is combust and you think it's not. So that's a very important consideration. The only other astrologer I ever met who knew about this was Hart Defoe. And he used to tell his students to buy astronomy software that astronomers use to actually look and see if the sun was combust or if there was a planetary war. Because planetary war is calculated the same way. Okay? We don't give the option on the planetary war, we just do it right. Okay? But for the combustion, we give you the option to use the modern, contemporary, popular method or the method given in the old books from India. Okay? Alright, then we have Varga calculations. In some calculations, like Vimshopaka and Shadbala, those are both quite common calculations. They're strength calculations. We use different Vargas. And there's different opinions of how to calculate different Vargas. Now, you can see any type of Varga calculation you want. Like if we right-click on column, we see our Vargas. We got a Hora chart, and we got a Hora Parivriti chart. Okay? We have a Drakana chart and a Drakana Parivriti. Okay? These are different methods. All right? Parivriti means going around in the regular order, essentially, revolving in the order of the zodiac. So in a Parivriti method, what we'd simply do, let's take the Hora chart, which is half a sign. The first half of Aries is Aries, the second half of Aries is Taurus, the first half of Taurus is Gemini, the fourth half of Taurus is Cancer, the first half of Gemini is Leo, then Virgo, then Libra, and Scorpio and Cancer, Sagittarius and Capricorn and Leo, and so on. And we go Aquarius and Pisces are the two Horas in Virgo. That's the Parivriti method. Okay? Now that method works with all Varga charts. Then there is the Parashara method. Parashara only uses that method if it's not possible to do another method. So like Parashara, in the Drakana, for instance, the first Drakana of Aries is Aries. The second Drakana, or third of Aries, is Leo, which is the fifth sign from there. And the last Drakana of Aries is Sagittarius. So we basically cut the chart into thirds. First sign, second sign, third sign. In the Chaturvimsamsa, where we divide each sign into four parts, Aries is the first part of Aries, Cancer is the second part, Libra is the third part, Capricorn is the fourth part. Okay? Then in Taurus, the first part is Taurus, the second part is Leo, the third part is Scorpio, fourth part is Aquarius. That's the Parashara method that he uses whenever he can. That only works in Vargas that you can divide equally with 12 somehow. So like Hora, 2 divides into 12. Drakana, 3 divides into 12. Saptamsha, 7 does not divide into 12. Navamsha, 9 does not divide into 12. So for those, he uses the Parivriti methods. So you can pick any of these options in Kala, the Parivriti or not. The ones that don't have two options, because you only can calculate them in the Parivriti method. Okay? Now, when you are in your calculation options, you have different options to choose for some of the Vargas that are used in the calculation. Okay, so in the Trimsamsa, the 30th Varga, we can take the Rashi, divide it into 30 parts of 1 degree each, and do a Paravriti method on that. Or we can simply say it's in the Hora, or sorry, the Trimsamsa of Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Venus, or Saturn, the 5 elemental planets. But we were never meant to calculate a chart based on the lords. For the lords, we're just meant to see the lord. Jupiter, Jupiter, Saturn, Jupiter, Jupiter, Mars, Jupiter. Okay, that's all we were really meant to do. All right? Okay, when it comes to a chart, Saravali and some other books tell us how to actually do a Trimsamsa chart, and that is we divide the sign into 30 parts, and we do the Paravriti method of Aries through Pisces, and we go around Aries through Pisces, Aries through Pisces, Aries through Pisces 30 times until we cover the whole zodiac. So when it comes to looking at a chart, you should use the actual Trimsamsa chart. When you want to know the Lord, the deity Lord, you should do this. See, in Vedic astrology, every Varga has lords. Here for the Navamsha, the lords are Rakshasas, Deva, and Nris, which are humans. For the Saptamsha, we have all these other strange lords. So every Varga has its lord. The Shashtiamsha has its strange lords, like Kantaka, Ardra, and so on. We don't create charts from those lords, though. Those lords are the older method of doing Vedic astrology, which has pretty much been neglected, but which I'll be teaching on next year. Okay, so that's our Trimsamsa option. For the Dasamsha, we can use the Parashara method, or we can use the Paravriti method, or we can use the reverse for even signs method based on Parashara. I like that one. Follow closely, I'll try to explain. Let's pull up the Dasamsha, contemporary method. Let's pull up the reverse for even Rashis. And over here we're going to pull up the Paravriti. The Paravriti is calculated real easily. We simply cut each sign into 10 parts, and starting at Aries, we go Aries through Pisces 12 times. We go the Aries through Pisces once, twice, 3, 4, 10 times until we get around the zodiac. It's a typical Paravriti method like used in the Navamsha and Saptamsha. Okay? That's one method. Parashara gives a strange method though. He says, for the Dasamshas, start at the sign, and if it's odd, and calculate the 10 parts from there. For an even sign, start at the 9th sign from them. So let's see what happens. I take an odd sign, Aries. Okay, the first Dasamsha is going to be Aries, then Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and the 10th Dasamsha will be Capricorn. All right? And then he says, for even signs, now we go to Taurus, an even sign, it starts from the 9th from there. So the 9th from Taurus is Capricorn. And now we go Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra is the 10th. So Capricorn's the first Dasamsha, and we go all the way to Libra as the last Dasamsha of Taurus. Now, from Libra, the first Dasamsha of Gemini is Gemini. We bounce back to Gemini. Okay? So what's strange about that is the pattern. If you write this whole pattern down, you'll see it's kind of odd. It doesn't follow a pattern like the other Vargas do. The other Vargas always follow some kind of cool pattern. Okay, so in the reverse option, okay, the Parashara reverse option, what happens is that from Aries we go 10 signs forward. So the first Dasamsha of Aries is Aries, then the second is Taurus, then Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn. Exactly the same as in the contemporary method. Okay? And from Taurus, the first sign is Capricorn. But instead of from Capricorn going Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, from Capricorn we count reverse now. We go Capricorn, Sagittarius, Scorpio, Libra, Virgo, Leo, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, and then finally the last one, Aries. Okay, so basically Aries goes from Aries to Capricorn, and Taurus goes from Capricorn to Aries in the Sidhamsa. So they mirror each other. Parashara also does something similar to that with the 24th Varga. And so seeing that pattern being similar, I decided to program and tried it. So it's another option for the Sidhamsa. It's an option I've become more and more liking. Okay, still needs more research, but that's what that option is. Okay, then the Chaturvimsamsa is the 24th Varga. We have the option of, we have two different options for that. One is we go reverse for even signs. The other one is we do not go reverse for even signs. So let's pull up those two charts. One is the Chaturvimsamsa, and one we call over here, I call it the Sidhamsa, which is the Sidhamsa, and it says Cancer reverse. Okay, now, how the Sidhamsa is calculated is really strange. It has its own rules. And this is the chart. Sidhamsa means perfection. This is a chart of spiritual advancement, your capacity to truly understand something. All right. Now in this chart, the Aries starts, male signs start at Leo. So all male signs start at Leo, and they go Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and then Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. So it goes around the zodiac from Leo twice. So all the odd signs, we cut them into 24 parts. And the first part starts with Leo and goes around the zodiac twice. So Aries has within it Leo through Cancer once and Leo through Cancer twice. Then for even signs, all the even signs, the first 24th portion starts at Cancer. So we have one method, the contemporary method, of going, all right, Taurus, the first part is Cancer, the first 24th part is Cancer, the second 24th part is Leo, then Virgo, Libra, Scorpio. We'll go around the zodiac once, and then twice to encompass all 24 parts. Okay? Or we can go reverse from Cancer for the even signs. So for even signs, we go Cancer, Gemini, Taurus as third part, Aries as fourth part, and we go backwards in reverse once and twice. Okay? Now, why would I program that method? Okay, because in the chart, as I did as an experiment, but I kind of like it. In the chart, we have two halves. We have what's called the solar half and the lunar half. The solar half is Leo through Aquarius, and the lunar half is Cancer through Aquarius going backwards. Okay, so this half up here, lunar half. This half down here, solar half. Those equate to the left and right nadis in your spine, the solar and lunar nadis. Okay? Now, so basically, with this 24th Varga, we're basically starting the Vargas at the solar nadi, or we start the Varga at the lunar nadi. Okay? So, it looks more consistent of a picture when we start at the lunar nadi and we go through the whole lunar nadi, that we don't just start at the lunar nadi and jump into the solar nadi without having completed the full lunar nadi, which we complete when we go reverse. Lunar is the receptive, the female, the backwards. The solar is the male, the forwards. Okay? The initiative. Male side is, let's do this. The female side, the lunar side is no. Okay, it's the side that says no, thank you. So the female side steps back and the male side advances, okay, until a happy medium is found where they can both live with each other. So since this is a sign of spiritual, the chart of essentially spiritual advancement, I took the naughty idea into consideration, and I decided to program it with an option to go reversed for the even signs. So it goes from Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, goes around the zodiac twice for that. So that's something else you all can experiment with. For the Vimshopaka, we do use the Chaturvimsamsa for the Ashtakavarga scheme of Vimsamsa, and that's why it's here as an option. Once you choose these, Kala is going to use them in any calculation that requires that Varga, like Shadbala and so on, and Vimshopaka. However, when you're using Kala, you can pull up any of the Varga options here, and we have a lot of them. Okay? I think, let's see, that covers it. Okay? That covers our calculation options. That's definitely the most tedious of these videos. If we got through this, the other ones are going to be much less complex and quicker. All right, thanks for hanging in there. Bye-bye.